The colony world was burning. The air was heavy with smoke, and the broken ruins of human buildings stretched as far as Captain Elias Ward could see. The ground shook again as another blast hit the surface, sending dust and stone into the sky. The battle between humans and the alien Thryn had reached its peak. Elias crouched behind a shattered wall with his unit, sweat running down his dirt-streaked face. His rifle was hot from constant fire. He glanced at the sky, dark clouds lit by flashes of blue energy bolts from Thryn cannons. Humanity had been fighting this war for years, and Elias had seen enough destruction to last a lifetime. Still, he pressed forward. "Ward! Left flank is weak!" one of his soldiers shouted. Elias nodded, motioning for his squad to spread out. The enemy was pushing hard, but they had to hold the line until reinforcements came. The Thryn were tall, armored beings with skin that gleamed like metal under the fires of war. Their voices were sharp, their movements precise. They fought with cold discipline, never hesitating, never showing fear. To many humans, they looked like monsters, but Elias had fought them long enough to know they were more than beasts. They were organized, intelligent, and determined. Blaster fire cut across the street. Elias ducked as a bolt slammed into the wall inches from his head. He rolled out, firing back, forcing the enemy soldiers to scatter. But then he saw something strange, something that froze him for a heartbeat. Through the haze of smoke, a small figure stumbled into the middle of the battlefield. It was a child. Elias blinked, thinking his eyes deceived him. But no, it was real. The figure was not human. The skin was pale silver, the eyes glowing faintly blue. It was a Thryn child, no older than 8 human years, terrified and lost among the ruins. The boy, at least Elias thought it was a boy, clutched at a broken piece of wall, trying to hide, but the battle raged around him. Blaster shots crisscrossed. The street and explosions thundered. Elias's breath caught in his throat. He knew what war demanded. An enemy child meant nothing in the larger fight, but he also knew what his heart demanded. He could not let the child die here, not like this. "Stay down!" one of his soldiers yelled. But Elias was already moving. He sprinted from cover, his boots slamming into the cracked pavement. The Thryn saw him, some raising their weapons in confusion. The child looked up, wide-eyed, frozen in fear. And then, it happened. A Thryn soldier on the far side spotted the child and Elias at the same moment. The alien's weapon shifted, a bright pulse of energy charging at its tip. Elias knew what was coming. The bolt would strike the child before he could even reach him. Without a second thought, Elias threw himself forward. The blast hit. It burned across his armor, tearing into his side. Pain roared through his body like fire. But he stayed upright, shielding the child with his frame. The force knocked him to one knee. He gasped, his vision blurring, but his arms wrapped protectively around the boy. For a brief moment, the battlefield fell silent. Both humans and Thryn stared. An enemy captain, badly wounded, crouched over a child that was not his own. The child whimpered, pressing against Elias's chest. Elias grit his teeth, forcing his body to stay strong. He would not let go. From the Thryn side, a voice rang out, sharp, commanding. A figure stepped forward through the smoke. She was tall, armored like the others, but her bearing was different. Her armor bore markings of rank, her eyes colder and sharper than steel. She was a Thryn officer, and when her gaze fell upon the child, her face changed. "Kyle!" she cried in her own tongue, rushing forward. The child reached out with a trembling hand. Elias blinked, realization hitting him. This was the boy's mother. The woman stopped a few feet away, her weapon still in hand, her soldiers tense and ready. But she did not fire. She looked at Elias, the human captain bleeding, still shielding her son. For a long moment, their eyes locked. Elias expected death. He expected the bolt of her weapon to finish him where he knelt. but instead she lowered her arm. Around them, the battle seemed to pause. Humans and Thryn alike were unsure whether to keep fighting. The sight was too strange, too heavy with meaning. One of Elias's men shouted for him to fall back, but Elias shook his head weakly. His strength was fading. He only managed a few words, his voice hoarse. "He's just a child." The Thryn. Officer's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke to her soldiers in sharp commands. Within seconds, a group of them surrounded Elias and the boy, weapons pointed not in anger, but in protection. Elias felt himself being pulled, his body too weak to resist. The last thing he saw before the darkness of unconsciousness took him was the alien woman gathering her son into her arms. And as he slipped into blackness, he realized something he had never imagined. He had saved the life of the enemy's child, and by the look in the mother's eyes, it meant far more than he could understand. Word count: 957. The first thing Captain Elias Ward felt when he opened his eyes was pain. A sharp burning ran through his side where the alien blast had struck him. The second thing he noticed was the strange ceiling above him. It was smooth and curved, glowing with a pale blue light. It was not human design. Elias tried to sit up, but hissed in pain. His chest was wrapped in thick cloth and strange gel-like pads. His armor was gone. He was lying on a narrow bed inside a chamber that hummed softly with alien energy. He was not in human hands anymore. He was in the care of the Thryn. Elias reached for his sidearm by instinct, but of course it was not there. He cursed under his breath and looked around. The room had no windows, only a single door made of dark alloy. His head felt heavy, his body weak, but his mind was sharp. He knew he was a prisoner. The door slid open with a hiss. Two tall Thryn. Guards entered, their weapons ready. Behind them walked the one Elias remembered, the woman from the battlefield, the officer, the mother. Her armor gleamed in the soft light, and the markings of rank across her chest plate caught Elias's eye. She moved with authority, yet her eyes, though cold, carried something else, something unsettled. Elias glared at her. "So," he rasped, voice dry, "I guess I should thank you for not shooting me." The woman tilted her head, her sharp features unreadable. "You saved Kyle," she said in accented but clear human speech. Her voice was low, firm, almost melodic. The child entered from behind her. Kyle. He rushed forward before the guards could stop him. The boy's small hands grabbed. Elias's arm and his glowing blue eyes stared with open trust. "Human," Kyle whispered softly. Elias blinked, stunned. He had never expected this. The child should hate him, fear him, but instead Kyle clung to him as if Elias were a shield. The woman stepped closer. "I am Serenia," she said, "commander of this unit, and mother to Kyle." She paused, then added in a tone heavy with weight, "You are alive because of him, because you chose to protect instead of kill." Elias forced a weak laugh. Didn't really think about it, just acted. He coughed, wincing. "So what now? You keep me locked up until I rot?" The guards shifted at his words, but Serenia raised her hand. They fell silent. Her eyes stayed fixed on Elias. "There are many who say you should be executed. You are the enemy, but I will not allow it. Not while Kyle still breathes." Elias frowned. "That's unusual mercy for a war like this." Serenia's gaze hardened. "Do not mistake it for weakness. You are alive because of the child, nothing more." Yet Elias saw the way her eyes softened when she glanced at Kyle, who still held onto his arm. The boy's trust had clearly shaken her. The guards escorted Elias later to another chamber, a cell. But it was not like the harsh cages he expected. It was small, yes, but it had a bed, light, and even a basin of water. The Thrinn did not treat him as a beast. Days passed. Elias healed slowly. Every day, Cale visited him, slipping past the guards with his mother's permission. The child would sit beside him, asking questions in broken human words and in the sing-song tones of the Thrinn language. Elias answered as best as he could. He told the boy about Earth, about trees that reached the sky, about oceans that stretched without end. Cale listened with wide eyes, soaking in every word. Sometimes he laughed, a sound that reminded Elias painfully of home. Serenia often stood in the corner during these talks. She rarely spoke, but her sharp gaze missed nothing. Elias felt her studying him, weighing him, as though she was trying to understand what kind of creature would risk his life for an enemy's child. One evening, Kyle fell asleep against Elias's arm. The boy's breathing was soft, peaceful. Elias carefully shifted him so he would be comfortable. Serenia stepped forward. For the first time, her voice was quiet. "Why did you do it, human? Why take the blast for him?" Elias looked at her tiredly. "Because he's just a child. Doesn't matter if he's human or Thrinn. Children shouldn't die in wars they didn't start." Serenia studied him for a long moment. Her face gave away little, but something flickered in her eyes. "Among my people," she said slowly, "such an act carries meaning. To save a child, to take a wound meant for them, it creates a bond." Elias raised an eyebrow. "A bond? Yes, a life debt. It is old law, from the time before we reached the stars. Rarely invoked now, but still honored." Her tone was firm. "You have earned a place of respect, even among enemies." Elias chuckled bitterly. "Respect, huh? Doesn't feel much like it. Locked in a cell." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You live. That is more than most of your kind who fall into our hands." Elias could not argue with that, but inside, he felt something shift. He realized he was not just a prisoner. He had become something else in the eyes of the Thrinn, something they did not yet know how to treat. As the days turned to weeks, whispers spread through the Thrinn camp. Soldiers eyed Elias differently when they passed his cell. Some glared with hatred, but others looked at him with a strange kind of respect. The story of the human who saved a commander's child was spreading. Elias knew this was only the beginning. He was caught in something larger than himself now, a thread that tied him not just to a boy but to an entire people, and he had no idea where that thread would lead. The Thrinn base was quiet that evening, the kind of silence that came after long battles. Captain Elias Ward sat on the edge of his cell bed, his body stronger now, though his wound still ached. He could walk, he could eat, and he could think clearly again. What he could not do was understand why he was still alive. The answer came the next morning. The heavy doors opened, and Commander Serenia entered. Behind her walked Cale, who ran toward Elias at once, his silver skin glowing faintly. Under the lights, the child's small hands grabbed Elias's arm as if afraid he would vanish. Elias managed a smile. "You again? You never get tired of visiting me, do you?" Kyle shook his head, his bright eyes shining. Serenia watched silently for a moment before speaking. "Today," she said in her calm but firm voice, "I will invoke the law." Elias frowned. "Law? What law?" Serenia stepped closer, her tall frame casting a long shadow across the cell. The guards behind her stood straighter, their expressions tense. "There is an ancient code among the Thrinn," Serenia explained. "It is older than our war fleets, older than our colonies. It is the code of bond. When one saves the life of a child, that life becomes tied to theirs, and the savior is tied to the child's family." Elias blinked. You mean I'm tied to you? To your people? Her eyes met his directly. Yes. By our law, you are now bound to my household. I cannot ignore it. I will claim you. The words struck Elias like a blow. Claimed? He stared at her in disbelief. Hold on, I didn't save him for a reward. You acted without thought of reward, Serenia interrupted. That is why the law recognizes it as true. If you had hesitated, if you had weighed gain and loss, the bond would not exist. But you did not. You acted. You shielded Kale with your body. The law has been fulfilled. The guards shifted uncomfortably, their eyes on Elias. Some looked disgusted, others confused. Elias could tell this decision was not popular with everyone. What does it mean exactly? Elias asked carefully. Serenia's face was calm, but her voice carried weight. It means you are no longer just a prisoner. You are part of my family unit. By tradition, I must protect you. Harming you would dishonor me and Kyle. My enemies cannot touch you without challenging me directly. Elias rubbed his temples. So I go from enemy soldier to adopted family? Kale beamed, as if the idea thrilled him. Family, the boy repeated happily, hugging Elias's arm tighter. Elias let out a long breath. This is madness. Serenia tilted her head. Perhaps, but it is law, and law shapes us, even in war. Word spread quickly through the base. Soldiers whispered in the halls, their metallic voices filled with disbelief. Some spat the word human with scorn, angry that their commander would protect him. Others bowed their heads, unwilling to question Serenia's authority. Elias felt the change most when he walked outside his cell under guard. Thrin eyes followed him everywhere. He was no longer a nameless enemy prisoner. He was the human bound by law to their commander. One evening, a group of Thrin soldiers approached him in the courtyard. Their leader sneered. You think saving a child makes you one of us, human? You are still weak. You are still the enemy. Before Elias could answer, Serenia appeared. Her presence silenced the group at once. He is under my claim, she said coldly. Any who challenge him challenge me. Do you wish to make that mistake? The soldiers lowered their heads and retreated. Elias exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do that, he muttered. Yes, Serenia replied simply. I did. That night, Elias lay awake on his bed. He thought about the strange twist of fate that had placed him here, claimed by the enemy, protected by the very people he had fought for years. It felt wrong, but it also felt different. The next day, Serenia spoke with him again. She stood in front of his cell, her voice steady. You will remain with us, but not as a caged prisoner. You will live among us under watch until I decide otherwise. You belong to Kale now. Elias stared at her. I don't belong to anyone. Her lips curved in the faintest hint of something, perhaps amusement, perhaps challenge. Then think of it this way. Kale belongs to you. He will look to you as family, whether you accept it or not. That bond cannot be undone. Kale, standing beside her, nodded eagerly. Family, he said again, smiling at Elias. Elias sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Kid, you're going to make my life very complicated. Serenia's eyes softened for the first time since Elias had met her. Perhaps, but maybe complication is what both our people need. As the days passed, Elias's place in the Thrin base grew stranger. He was watched at all times, yes, but he was also greeted with a mix of respect and suspicion. Some soldiers avoided him. Others muttered under their breath. But none dared to strike him, not while Serenia's claim protected him. Elias often wondered what his own people would think if they saw him now, eating alien food, walking among alien warriors, bound by alien law. They would call him a traitor. maybe worse. But every time Kyle ran to him, laughing, tugging at his hand, Elias felt something different. The boy's trust reminded him why he had acted that day on the battlefield. Not for law, not for honor, just because it was the right thing to do. And now, that one choice had changed everything. Elias knew the war was far from over, but deep inside, he felt it. The bond had begun to pull him down a path he could never have imagined. Life inside the Thryn stronghold had changed for Captain Elias Ward. He was no longer locked in a cell. Instead, he lived in a small chamber near Serenya's quarters. He could walk under guard, eat with others, and even train his body back to strength. But freedom carried weight. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some Thryn soldiers looked at him with suspicion, whispering behind his back. Others showed open anger, muttering words he did not understand but could feel in their tone. Yet there were also those who bowed slightly, as if showing respect. Elias was caught between two worlds, not a prisoner, not a friend, something in between. Kale, however, made it easier. The boy stayed close to him, holding his hand, asking endless questions. Kyle wanted to know about Earth, about human ships, about why humans fought. Elias tried to answer in simple words, often finding himself smiling despite the war around them. One evening, Elias and Serenya sat across from each other in the dining hall. The room was dim, lit by tall blue crystals that hummed softly. Kyle sat between them, chewing on a strange fruit. "You do not eat much?" Serenya observed, watching Elias. He shrugged. "Your food is different. Not bad, just strange." Serenya tilted her head. "Strange is a word your people use often. Do you always call what you do not know strange?" Elias smirked. Better than calling it disgusting. Kale laughed at that, even if he did not fully understand the joke. Serenya's lips curved slightly, almost a smile, though it vanished quickly. After Kale left to rest, Serenya leaned closer. Her voice lowered. "You are changing some of my soldiers." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Changing?" "They watch you. They hear your words. Some begin to question. They wonder if humans are truly only enemies. Your courage, your patience with Kale, it unsettles them." Her eyes narrowed. "Others see it as weakness. They fear you will break our discipline." Elias leaned back. "Maybe seeing each other as more than enemies isn't weakness. Maybe it's strength." Serenya studied him, her expression unreadable. "You speak of peace. Yet your armies still attack our borders. Your fleets still burn our colonies. And yours do the same," Elias countered. His voice was calm but firm. "We're trapped in the same cycle. Doesn't mean it has to stay that way." For a moment, silence filled the hall. Two warriors from different worlds, staring at each other, both stubborn, both carrying the weight of their people. The next day, tension in the base grew sharper. A commander named Varric, tall and broad even among the Thryn, confronted Serenya in front of her soldiers. Elias happened to be nearby when it happened. "You dishonor us," Varric said, his voice hard as stone. "You keep this human alive. You call him family, yet his kind kills ours without mercy." Serenya stood tall, her eyes cold. "He saved Kyle. The bond is law." Varric's eyes burned with anger. "Law should not bind us to weakness." His gaze shifted to Elias, filled with hatred. "Let me end this now. Let me show the soldiers what strength truly means." The crowd of Thryn murmured, some nodding in agreement. Elias felt the weight of their stares. His hands tightened into fists, though he had no weapon. But before Varric could step forward, Serenya raised her hand sharply. "Enough! Challenge me if you dare, but you will not touch him while I live." The hall went silent. Varric's jaw clenched, but he did not move. Finally, he bowed his head stiffly and walked away, his soldiers Following, Elias let out a slow breath. He glanced at Serenia. You risk a lot, protecting me like that. Her eyes met his. I protect the law, and I protect my son. Do not mistake it for anything else. Yet Elias could not ignore the truth. She had chosen him again and again, even when it put her at odds with her own people. Later that night, Elias stood outside under the alien sky. The stars were sharp and cold, brighter than he had ever seen on Earth. He thought about his unit, about the humans who still fought and bled. To them, he was missing, perhaps dead. If they saw him now, walking free among the enemy, what would they think? His loyalty to humanity pulled at him. But then Kale appeared, running to his side, his small hand slipping into Elias's. The boy looked up at him with complete trust. That trust pulled just as strongly. Serenia joined them, her voice quiet. You are torn. I see it in your eyes. Elias gave a tired smile. I'm a soldier. My duty is to my people. But now, I don't know. I never thought I'd feel anything but hate for the Thryn. And then you, and Kale. He shook his head. It changes things. Serenia looked up at the stars. Perhaps the war will never end. Perhaps our people are too different. But I have seen something in you, Elias Ward. Something I cannot ignore. You value life more than victory. That is rare. Her words lingered in the night air. Elias felt the truth in them. He was caught between two loyalties, his people's war, and the bond that tied him to Kale and Serenia. And deep inside, he knew a time would come when he would have to choose. The dawn came slowly over the Thryn base. The alien sun painted the sky in shades of silver and blue, glinting across the metallic walls. Captain Elias Ward stood on the balcony of his chamber, looking down at the activity below. Soldiers moved. With precision, drills echoing softly across the courtyard. Everything seemed normal, but Elias knew it was far from it. Word had spread quickly. Human forces were approaching. Not a small strike, but a full offensive. Scouts had detected ships moving in from multiple directions, weapons ready, and their arrival meant the base would soon be under attack. Elias's chest tightened. He could not run. Kale was inside, and Serenia had forbidden leaving. His bond to the child and the Thryn law that claimed him tied him here, whether he liked it or not. Elias, a familiar voice called. He turned to see Kyle running toward him, glowing faintly in the early light. The boy held a small satchel of supplies. They say fighting is coming. Will you help? Elias shook his head slightly, smiling despite the worry. You stay safe. Kyle, no matter what, I'll protect you. The boy nodded seriously, as if he understood the gravity of those words. I trust you. Later, Serenia appeared at his side. Her armor gleamed under the rising sun, her expression unreadable. The humans will attack soon, she said. We have defenses, but not enough. You must decide. Will you stay and help, defend this place, or leave with your kind? Elias's mind raced. Leaving meant survival, but staying meant risking everything. Not just his life, but Kale's. He remembered the day he had shielded the boy from a blast. He had no hesitation. Then, why should it be different now? I stay, he said firmly. I fight with you. Serenia studied him. So be it. But know this. Your choice may make enemies of your own people. Elias nodded. He understood. But Kale's safety mattered more than any loyalty to armies or borders. The human attack came by mid-afternoon. Ships descended from the clouds, firing. Bright energy pulses at the base. Alarms rang, and the Thryn soldiers scrambled to positions. Elias moved alongside them, still in alien armor, unfamiliar weapons in his hands. At first, he felt like an intruder in a world that was not his own. But then Kale appeared behind the walls, watching with wide eyes, and he remembered why he was here. Courage was not about borders or species. It was about protecting life. The battle was fierce. Energy bolts streaked across the sky, exploding against shields and walls. The Thrinn were skilled, but human ships were relentless. Elias moved swiftly among them, using his combat training to help position soldiers, coordinate defenses, and even take down a few advancing drones. At one point, a blast tore through the wall near Kale's hiding spot. Elias ran, diving toward the rubble, ignoring the pain in his side. Dust and debris filled the air, but he reached the child just in time, pulling him behind cover as another shot tore through where Kale had been. Serenia watched. Her sharp eyes softened. Elias had risked himself again, the same way he had on the battlefield months ago. He acted without hesitation, without thought for his own life. By evening, the humans were forced to retreat. The Thrinn base was damaged but intact, and the soldiers looked to Elias differently now, not just as a human, not just as a prisoner, but as someone who had proven his courage, loyalty, and heart. Kyle ran to him, hugging his leg tightly. "You saved me," the boy whispered, his voice trembling with relief. Elias bent down, resting his hands on Kale's shoulders. "I will always try, kid. I promise." Serenia stepped forward, her expression both stern and proud. "You have proven yourself," she said, "not just to my soldiers, but to me. You are more than a stranger. You are part of our family. And perhaps a bridge between our peoples." Elias looked at her, catching a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. He realized then that his place here was no longer defined by battle lines or laws alone. It was defined by choices, the ones he made for Kale and for life itself. As the base began repairs, Elias walked the corridors, observing the Thrinn soldiers. Some stared at him, some avoided him, but none challenged him openly. He knew some still resented his presence. That was expected. But their respect had grown alongside their fear and curiosity. That night he sat in his chamber with Kale asleep, beside him. He thought about what had just happened, the battle, the retreat, the lives saved. He thought about the bond that Serenia had claimed, the law that tied him to this alien family, and the decisions that had brought him here. His mind drifted to Earth, to his unit, to his friends still fighting across distant worlds. Would they understand what he had done? Perhaps not. But that was no longer his concern. His duty now was clear. Protect Kale. Honor the bond. Teach others that life, any life, was worth more than victory or pride. As he lay there, exhausted, but awake, Elias understood something essential. Courage was not about killing enemies or winning wars. It was about standing for what mattered most. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. And tonight, he had done just that. The battle was over. Smoke rose from the damaged outer walls of the Thrinn base, and the air was thick with the scent of burned metal. Soldiers moved cautiously, repairing broken shields, tending to the wounded, and assessing losses. Captain Elias, Ward, walked among them, his armor scuffed and dusty, but his body stronger after days of fighting. Kyle clung to his side, small hands gripping his arm. The boy had grown braver during the attack, staying close, yet never letting fear control him. Serenia approached, her face calm yet proud. Her armor bore marks from the battle, but her bearing was unshaken. She stopped in front of Elias, looking him directly in the eye. "You chose to stay," she said softly. "You chose to fight with us, not against us. That choice will not be forgotten." Elias nodded. "I didn't do it for thanks," he replied. "I did it because Kale mattered. Because life matters, always." Serenia's gaze softened. And that is why the bond exists. You acted with courage, without thought for reward or fear. That is rare, even among my people. Perhaps rare in any people. Elias shifted, noticing the soldiers around them watching quietly. Their expressions were a mix of respect and curiosity. Some still hesitated, unsure what to make of a human living among them, but none dared challenge him openly. Kyle tugged at Elias's hand. "Do they all like you now?" the boy asked. Elias chuckled softly. "Not all, kid, but they're learning. And maybe one day they'll understand." The boy nodded seriously. "I like you. You're my family." Elias felt a warmth he hadn't expected. He reached down, ruffling Kale's silver hair. "And you're mine, kid. I'll always protect you." Serenia studied the exchange between human and Thryn child, her lips twitching almost into a smile. "Perhaps this is the beginning," she murmured. "Perhaps one act of courage can bridge the gap between our peoples." Days passed. Repairs were made. The Thryn soldiers trained, children were secured, and Elias continued to live among them, no longer a prisoner but a participant in their lives. The bond with Kale grew stronger each day, and through it, Elias began to understand more about the Thryn, not just their culture or law, but their capacity for care, loyalty, and honor. Elias began teaching Kale simple human lessons: how to run, how to aim, how to understand choices. In return, Kale taught him Thryn songs and traditions, their stories and ways of thinking. It was a strange mix, but it felt natural. Slowly, Elias became more than a human among Thryn. He became a bridge. Serenia watched this quietly. She respected his courage, his patience, and his sense of justice. One evening, she approached him as he practiced drills with Kale in the open courtyard. "You've changed them," she said simply. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "Maybe. But I think they've changed me too." She studied him for a long moment. "You are more than a soldier, Elias Ward. You have a sense of honor that goes beyond war, beyond survival. That is something I have rarely seen." Elias shrugged. "I just know what it's like to lose someone. I couldn't let Kale die, and I won't let him now." A soft wind blew across the courtyard, carrying with it the faint scent of alien blooms and the distant hum of energy shields. Elias felt a strange calm. The war had not ended, but something had changed. A human had saved a Thryn child. A Thryn mother had claimed him, and a bond stronger than armies now tied them together. Weeks later, scouts brought news from the borders. Small skirmishes continued, but no large attacks were imminent. Both humans and Thryn seemed cautious, as if sensing a fragile balance had formed. Elias realized that his presence, his bond with Kale, and the choices he had made might become symbols of a different kind of courage, a courage not to destroy, but to protect, to connect, to build something new. One evening, Elias stood with Serenia on a high platform overlooking the base. Kyle sat nearby, drawing shapes in the dust with a stick. The stars were sharp in the alien sky, silver and bright, stretching endlessly. "Do you think this will last?" Elias asked. Serenia's eyes followed the boy. "I do not know. There will be those who resist, who doubt, who fear change. But bonds like yours cannot be undone by fear alone." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of those words. He looked at Kale, who smiled up at him without fear, without doubt. He realized that courage was not measured in battles alone. It was measured in choices, in standing for life, in protecting the innocent, and in forming bonds that others could not understand. "Then we will face it," Elias said. "Whatever comes, we face it together. Kyle, you, me, and whoever is brave enough to stand with us." Kyle grinned, his small teeth flashing. Yes, together! Serenia placed a hand on Elias's shoulder, a gesture of approval, perhaps even friendship. Then let us hope our actions speak louder than our wars. Perhaps one day, others will see the value in what you have done. Perhaps one day humans and Thrin will not only fight, but also live and protect together. Elias smiled faintly. Maybe it will start with one child and one human who chose to shield him from harm. The wind swept across the platform, carrying the quiet promise of change. Elias felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Not just for himself, or for Kale, or for the Thrin, but for something bigger. A chance that courage, compassion, and bonds of life could rise above war. He turned to Kale, brushing dust from the boy's small shoulders. We have work to do, kid, but I think we can do it. Kale nodded, eyes bright and trusting. Together, they walked back toward the base, Elias feeling the weight of his choice and the strength of his bond. For the first time in a long time, he knew the path forward was not just survival. It was something greater. Something that could change the course of the war, the course of their people, and perhaps the course of the galaxy itself, and he was ready to take that path. Word count: 954. This completes Part 6. A New Path. Bringing the story to a hopeful, heroic conclusion. Elias proves humanity's courage and compassion, the bond with Kale and Serenia is solidified, and a bridge for peace is hinted for the future. The full 6-part HFY story is now complete. If you want, I can also compile all 6 parts into a single polished story, 5,700 words, for smooth reading and consistency.